Hello and welcome to the Three Will Podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. Today I have Bruce Harple here with me. He is and I've got a frog in my throat, he is the VP of Delivery for Three Will. Welcome.
Hey, Danny, good morning. Glad to be here.
Excellent. And what we wanted to talk about today was customer expectation management. And this can go, I think, in a lot of, it's probably mainly process focused, but I think can really also focus in on some of the soft areas with regards to expectation management. I guess just sort of get us kicked off with the subject.
Yeah, so for me, kind of customer expectation management in the service business is critical, right? That it's critical that we successfully deliver to our customers and that we meet and exceed their expectations. So I kind of think about the tools that we use to kind of help do that, and there's really kind of 5 areas I wanted to talk about today. One is, and we've talked about this before, Danny, in a previous podcast, and we'll kind of summarize it, but just really, how do we leverage the Agile Scrum process and really kind of setting and managing customer expectations, especially around scope. And then I want to talk about risk management and what we do there. And then talk about kind of our weekly status reporting and kind of how that's evolved into a more effective way to kind of communicate risks, to communicate status to customers.
Great.
And then something we've started to do more recently is these bi-weekly leadership status meetings where we try to get up a level in the organization and really just talk about, the RAG status and where a project's at and what we can do to, better collaborate together and, remove any impediments and risks that might be there. And then just really, at the end of the day, and this gets into more of the softer skills, but really just, we have to adjust the way we deliver to our customers to kind of better fit that customer's, I'll call it personality. Right? So every customer is different, and the way you engage with them and the way they like for their partners to engage is different. You really have to learn and understand those personalities and adjust and adapt your delivery process to that customer. So those are kind of the areas I wanted to drill into today.
That's great. So let's jump right into the first area.
Yeah, so the first area, just talking about how we leverage Agile Scrum, and this is, we've covered this a bit in the past, and we're obviously an Agile, Scrum shop, and the key thing that Agile Scrum really helps us do is to really, drives out the scope for a project. So during the sales cycle, we build a product backlog. The product backlog, contains a number of user stories. A user story is just a definition of a customer requirement. And those user stories in the sales cycle are prioritized, and they're sized. They're sized using a technique called story pointing, which we've talked about that in the past. And those user stories and the story points assigned to them, that really, and that prioritization, that sets the scope for the project. So when we write an SOW, we reference that product backlog. We reference all the user stories that were identified as must-have and the size of those user stories. So if all those user stories total up to 50 story points worth of effort, that's our scope, right? And that's kind of our baseline.
So you're really from the get-go starting to set expectation around this is what you're going to get.
Yeah, not only this is what you're going to get, but this is how long it's going to take us to do it, right? Here's how many sprints it's going to take to do it. So here's your schedule. And then obviously we take those story points and convert those into hours and dollars, which sets the budget. But those story points, that really drives that scope and sets that expectation along with those user stories.
And I like that you're also from the get-go you're prioritizing as well. So you sort of know what's important to the customer, sort of getting that up front so we can focus in on those first.
Yeah, it's that concept of, in the product world of kind of identifying that minimal viable product, that MVP solution. So what's the minimum requirements that have to be implemented, for this solution to really, meet the needs of the customer's business or to solve the business problem they brought us in to help solve.
And then I know when we've talked previously, we talked about and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, but like acceptance criteria, how does that feed into this?
I mean, acceptance criteria is a key part of that. So for every user story, we do identify what's the acceptance criteria for that user story. So, what is it that the customer is going to look at to indicate that, yes, I accept that this requirement has been successfully implemented. So that's a key piece of setting those expectations up front.
Great. So sort of how we run projects really is focused around expectation management. Really is important to us.
Yeah, and then to kind of follow on that, so during every sprint review, right? So throughout a sprint, we always uncover new requirements, which is a new user story, which means new story points. And so part of the sprint review and sprint planning process, we kind of go through all the new requirements, all the new user stories with the customers. And maybe there's 5 story points worth of new requirements that have been identified. So we sit down with the customer, we say, these new requirements have been identified, 5 story points worth of work. How do these rank in importance to the other user stories, that have already been prioritized and included in scope? And if these are more important, and you want to bring those into scope, they have to make a decision. Are there 5 other story points I can now take out of scope because they're less important than these new requirements? Or, they can optionally, sign a change order, right, at increased scope.
Okay.
Which, in turn increases budget and could impact schedule. So, it's a great process, and we're doing it as we go. So you're continuously looking at that scope, continually managing that scope, but also giving the customer the tools and information for them to make the decisions that are right for their business.
So you're giving them the flexibility to switch out different items that are of the same size. But then also if you're running into something where they really need to have something that's larger, that, hey, we're talking, this is apples to oranges, this is more scope or less scope, whichever one we might be talking about, but really trying to make sure that you're not staying inflexible as a project, as needs change, as priorities change, that we're allowing for that to occur on projects.
Absolutely. And it's our job to do the best job we can at educating a customer on the changes we've uncovered, what that means, in the way of a scope, cost, duration, and let them make the decisions that are best for their business.
Nice. So are we into item 2 yet?
Yeah. Why don't we jump into the next item is risk management.
Okay.
Right. And in the consulting world, everybody understands the importance of risk management, and it is critical to. I think the key thing here is it's real easy at the start of a project to identify, here's the risk we see with the project, and we have a lot of kind of standard risks that we kind of call out to customers, but the important piece is kind of as part of that 2-week sprint cycle, to continuously be looking at risks and assessing those risks and raising those up to the customer, and I kind of categorize risks into 2 categories, right? At a very high level, we kind of either look at technical risks or business risks.
Okay.
Right, and so for technical risks, right, the way we like to mitigate those risks. So technical risk tends to be, there's either some level of technical complexity, to implement a requirement, or there's some level of technical uncertainty, right? Maybe it's something we've not done before, or it's some new technology in the customer's environment, so there's some risk associated with that. So, most of the time when there's technical risks, what we tend to do is include user stories. We call them proof of concepts, like a technical proof of concept, to really eliminate that risk. So really, if there's complexity, maybe there are 3 different ways we can implement a user story with different levels of complexity, different levels of cost, different levels of effort. And we kind of mock that up in a proof of concept and then share that with the customer. And really, again, it's all about giving them the information to make the decisions that make the most sense for them.
This sounds a lot like a spike. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
It's a spike. And then with business risk, those tend to be focused around, solution adoption. Maybe you have a passive customer. There are customers that just don't engage with us as much as we'd like them to engage, and that's a risk, right? Because we want their feedback, and as you know, with Agile, we want them involved every 2 weeks in our sprint reviews. We want them kind of replanning with us. So, it could be organizational churn, right? Organizations change. There's mergers that takes place and acquisitions. Business processes change. So, for the business risks, I think we tend to really focus on very specific mitigation plans. Each of those risks tend to be different, and they're not as with a technical risk, you can do a spike, you can do a proof of concept. There's some things you can do to mitigate those risks. With the business risks, each one is unique, and I think you do have to have a mitigation plan to address each of those risks. So, but it's important, and I think a lot of times it's easy to not think about risks on an ongoing basis. And we try to be proactive in that and try to stay on top of that risk management, because it all relates to, am I going to successfully deliver this solution at the end?
And this is this a SharePoint list that's up on the extranet, or how do we communicate what the risks are to customers? How's that typically done?
Really two ways. I mean, it is on our project extranet site, which is kind of the collaboration sites we establish, to collaborate with our customers. We're very transparent, so we let our customers see everything associated with the project. And then it's also what we call it out in our weekly status reports.
Okay.
Which actually leads to the
number
next
three.
Item, number 3.
Let's
there
go
you
to
go.
Number 3, excellent.
Great lead in. Yeah, so the third way of kind of helping us set expectations with customers is through weekly status reporting, and any consulting firm does that. And I think when I think about weekly status reporting, kind of the old model, right, that we used, and even the old model for 3-Wheel is, we kind of did a brain dump on, man, here's everything we've accomplished in this past week. Here's our plans for this week. And it was just, they were lengthy. And, in today's world, executives and leaders, time is precious to them. And, they don't have time to read a lengthy status report. And we've gone to a model of what we call just kind of really highlighting, we call it the RAG status. It's red, amber, green, right? So, and we look at 5 key metrics for a project, which, it's scope, schedule, budget, customer dependencies, and external dependencies. And really, for an executive, our goal is that, when they look at a status report, it's colored. So they're looking for anything that's yellow or red. If they get a status report, it's all green, they might not even read any further. They're done, right?
Yes.
Because I've had customers tell me, I don't even read your status reports. There's just too much detail. And now we've kind of moved to just this very concise, RAG status type of reporting. It's much more effective for them. They appreciate that, and it saves them time. And if there's something amber or red, I do get emails from customers saying, what can I do, to help that issue.
So that's interesting. So earlier, this came from like a project retrospective where people were saying it's funny. I'm thinking of a quote that I saw recently, which was something to the extent of, "I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one." Basically, sometimes it's more difficult to sort of condense the message of what you're trying to give to somebody. So but you were saying this came out of a retrospective, maybe where people were saying, I just didn't have the time to get through the status report.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. We do project retrospectives at the end of our projects, and that is the kind of feedback that we get from customers, in the way of kind of just being more precise and more crisp in our communications, and just looking to save them time.
Awesome. Are we on to 4 yet, or are we done with 3?
No, I think we're done with 3, and 3 kind of feeds into 4.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've recently started doing. And I say recently, being over maybe the past year to 18 months, is scheduling what we call a bi-weekly leadership status meeting, and the intent is to, on a bi-weekly basis, kind of move up a level in the organization, right? Okay. To an executive level above the people you're working with as product owners and maybe sponsors. And really taking that RAG status, right, that's in the status report, and really reviewing that at an executive level, right, so that you're making sure that visibility into, especially anything that's amber or red, that you're making sure that visibility is getting pushed up into an organization. And the other thing we do is we call out any new risks, and we talk about that. We talk about any critical impediments the team might have and how we can collaborate together as a leadership team, right, to solve those impediments. And we also share observations, right? So, a lot of times, there could be 3-Wheel consultants that aren't meeting a customer's expectation for some reason, and we want to know that. Yep. Yeah, we want to know that sooner rather than later. In some cases, the same thing applies on the customer side. There might be somebody on the customer side who's not, doing the things that we need for them to do, to keep the project moving forward. So we want to have a transparent and very open and honest conversation with our customers around those kind of things, right? So if there's things that we can do better or they can do better, right, to make us more effective as a team, as a collaborative team, we want to be able to call those things out in a non-threatening way, in a way that we can all work together and get better at what we do. So, it's just another great way of, getting executives, visibility into what's going on. But again, trying to do it in a way it's a 30-minute conversation. It's really focused on the key things that require discussion, that require some decision making, and really just collaborating, with that customer.
It's funny, before this conversation, I don't know if I'd heard the term RAG very much. So it's red, amber, green. So folks who are wondering, what's RAG status? What does that mean? So it's basically a stoplight.
Yeah, it's a stoplight metaphor. Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Excellent. So this is wonderful. So this, I think, raising it up a level too also makes sure you have sort of the executive sponsorship of this isn't going to be sideswiped later on and find out, oh, well, we had this problem, and everybody has concerns sometimes about raising things up, but it's important, I guess, every other week. Is this done at the end of the sprint, or is there, what's sort of, since we have 2-week sprints typically, is it something that's done at a certain time during the sprint?
We don't tie it to the sprints at all.
Okay.
It really is tied more to availability of that executive team more than anything else, because we all know they're busy.
Right.
And they are more than happy to engage.
Yep.
And they, most executives, want to solve problems. If there are issues that the team is having, and if there's issues that over things they control, they want to know, right? And they want to know how they can help, and they're more than happy and anxious to help, remove any barriers, remove any impediments that the team might have. So, we found them really valuable in just kind of keeping those expectations set, making sure that we're collectively, mitigating risks, solving and removing impediments, and making sure that things are on track.
Excellent. And we're to number 5.
Number 5. This is, kind of, I talk about kind of the personality of a customer, right? So every customer is different. Every customer is unique. The way they engage with their partners is different. Examples might be, does the customer want you on site? Do they prefer remote? Are they more responsive to email or telephone calls? Meeting times and durations. Are they detail oriented, or they just give me the big picture? Give me the net of what I need to know and the decisions I need to make. What is their decision making model? So, it's important for us, as we go through a project, to learn more about that customer, about their personality, about the way they engage, about what they like, what they don't like, and how they respond to us. And really adapting, our process, adapting the way we report to them, adapting the way we communicate with them. And a big part of this is something that I talk about with our principal consultants and our Scrum Masters. It's what I call situational awareness, right? And so I kind of captured the definition of situational awareness. It's kind of a military term or an aviation term, but it applies to business, right? And your interaction with customers. And it has kind of 3 pieces, right? It's kind of, the first one by definition is perception of the elements, in the environment, kind of within a space. So it's kind of perception of that customer's environment. It's perception of the way they engage in that environment. It's perception of the body language that you see with that customer, with the tonation with that customer. And then there's kind of comprehending that meaning. That's kind of part 2. So really understanding, what is that message, that the customer is sending to me, either directly or indirectly. And then the third part of it is, projection of the status of that situation in the future. So it's really understanding, how do I need to adjust, right, to that situation. It's really just kind of shifting expectations and making sure you're aware of the situations, the events, the dynamics that change throughout a project and change within that customer's business, and really making sure you're really aware of that. It's kind of having radar and being sensitive to that and being able to adapt to that. And that's, that's a skill that is learned and developed, right, over time. And it's something that we talk a lot about.
Yep.
And
it's probably something you end up having to coach individuals on as well, is maybe after a meeting talk through what happened in that meeting and trying to make sense of it, because we are Tommy and I are engineers, and typically engineers are a little oblivious to sometimes what else is going on in the room. They're very focused in on what's the problem and how to solve the problem, and so sometimes some of the soft dynamics of working with teams, with individuals, sometimes are missed. So that's really love that you're focusing in on this.
Yeah, and I think the consultants at 3Will, they all are consultants that want to please their customers. They want to make their customers happy, and a big part of that is making sure that the leadership here at 3Will, the people engaging with the customer and setting expectations, that we're really continuously managing those expectations. Because at the end of the day, we want our customers to be happy. We want to make sure we solve the problem, the pain that they have, and that their lives get better. At the end of the day.
Well, Bruce, we are so fortunate to have you here at 3Will, because you do such a great job with managing expectations with customers, and just to come out of projects thrilled, and we just hear so many good things, and it makes it so much easier on Tommy, on me, on everybody at 3Will. So thank you for having such a great focus in on this vitally important thing to us. We if our customers are not happy, we're going out of business and going out quickly.
Absolutely.
And it's a huge reason why we've been in business for so long. It's a huge reason why so many people like to come back and work with us time and time again for different projects that come up. So thank you so much, Bruce.
You bet. I've enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this as well. And I hope everybody got something out of this, and especially if you're in the situation either where you're working with vendors or you're a consultant yourself and trying to work through how do you manage customer expectations. This was helpful for you. Thank you so much for listening to the 3Will podcast. Please drop by our website, 3will.com, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.